Hello, and welcome back to New Rome, the show where we debate the fall of Western civilization and we discuss the many ways that humanity is killing itself this week. I'm Arthur. This is our special guest, Kevin. Welcome to the round table. Let's discuss. Hi, and we're back. So, Kevin, welcome to the round table.
Thank you very much, Arthur.
Of course. So, I know you haven't been here before, but we begin every roundtable discussion with a lovely selection of hors d'oeuvres and then a beverage. So please, feel free to open up your creamy ginger root beer. For those of you who are following us at home and who wish to enjoy in our culinary enjoyment.
That's probably too much of it.
It's not that bad. So please, feel free, take a sip. Tell me what you think. Well, that's interesting.
Wow, I can taste the ginger
Right? That's not
really well.
Which is good because most ginger drinks are terrible.
Yeah, no, this is like palatable ginger. I mean, compared to my previous experiences with ginger, which is strictly eating ginger leaves.
Right. No, I think because I think there's two types of ginger. There's there's like the high fructose corn syrup ginger, and then there's you actually put ginger in this beverage of ginger, right?
Yeah.
Which is I think what this is. It kind of tastes to me like somebody mixed together root beer, cream soda, and then threw a bunch of ginger into it,
Yeah,
which is delicious.
I
It's really good. Today, Kevin, we have a selection of cheese and chocolate.
Oh, that's cheese.
It is cheese. What did you think it was?
I don't know. I thought it was like white chocolate or something.
Oh no, it's cheese.
No,
This
okay.
particular cheese is actually an aged Rembrandt Gouda cheese.
Gouda. Okay.
So it's delicious. So please, feel free, take a slice.
Yup. Tastes like cheese.
Do you like cheese?
This actually tastes a lot like Parmesan.
So,
Which is
anytime...
kind of weird because I don't normally eat Parmesan raw.
This is Gouda. I think what you're tasting is the nuttiness associated with aging cheese a long time.
Yeah, maybe.
It's very good. As opposed to like a creamy. Which I think is really good. As far as the chocolate today, we have a dark chocolate with infused with pink Himalayan sea salt.
Sea salt.
Exactly.
Alright.
So it's more of a salty chocolate. But it is delicious. Bon appetit.
That falls apart really well.
Oh, I know. It's really good. So you were saying you saw the God Emperor the other day.
Yeah.
Please,
Yeah, so
enlighten me.
I work with a group that had the opportunity to table at the Republican State Convention. And Donald Trump gave a speech there.
Were you bathed in the light of existential glory?
I wouldn't put it that way. I tend to take issue with cult action.
Right.
And
I'm the same
let
way.
me tell you.
I'm just in it for the lulls.
Yeah. The MAGA cult is real. It is real.
Amen.
And never have I experienced it before to the magnitude that I did on Saturday.
I imagine. So were people just going bananas, or what was it like?
Oh my gosh, yeah. People were... He would say like a word and people would give him a standing ovation. Like
things.
Yeah.
I have all the things.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly like that. Seriously, it was exactly like that. And I was just like, I'm just here because it's the first time like a president's given a campaign speech in the state of Nevada, sort of a thing, like a sitting president.
Right.
It was like there's a lot of historical value, and also I was getting paid to be there, so
That always helps.
that I won't say by who because probably inappropriate, but
Right.
probably not appropriate.
They'll track me down. They'll be like, oh, okay, he's there.
Dang. All right.
So,
Yeah.
in some ways, it's kind of funny, right? Because, so when I see Donald Trump, the very first thing that comes to my mind. Now I know loose cannon liberals are always wanting to label him as Hitler, but I see him much more as a Caesar. I see him way more as like a Julius Caesar character. Now, I'm not saying that he's comparable to Julius Caesar, as in he's as smart or a military tactician.
No, he's definitely not.
No, obviously. You and I know that. But I'm saying that if you wanted to, you know, label him as like increase of federal force, fall of like, you know, like, I would put him in that category of people.
Well, Julius Caesar directly translates for me in like modern terms into Mussolini, so that I don't know if that's a great comparison. Because
Mussolini's a terrible Julius Caesar.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call Donald Trump a fascist.
Well, obviously, he's
but
not a
Julius
fascist.
Caesar was as close to one as you could get at that time.
Well, I mean,
so
when you have the sacrosanctity of Roman officials, you know, where it's like they literally are not only viewed as, you know, like, oh, this is an important political person, but you almost become semi-divine when you are elected to office in the Roman Republic. I feel like that's the element that's missing.
No, yeah.
Like if you had
secularism
exactly,
of fascism,
if you had a kind of sacrosanctity surrounding the presidency in the way that you did, like, you know, the tribune, you know,
or any monarchy throughout
exactly
the history of Europe.
Exactly. Then it would be much different, but we're not seeing that. So that carries really well into what we're actually talking about today, Kevin, which, as I was discussing before we started shooting, which is immigration.
Right.
So, I knew it was going to be a good discussion because I know you're a libertarian. You're a pretty hardline libertarian. I would put myself... I wouldn't say I'm to the right of center, but I'm in the center of the right, is what I would say. So it's like, you know... where it's like I'm pretty conservative on most things.
You're like on the political compass where you have the blue and the purple where they meet.
Exactly. I'm like a far right libertarian.
Yeah, I'm like way in the purple.
Right.
So,
you know, because the temptation to say, you know, get off my country, civilization / whatever, it's there. But yeah. I try not to. I dropped my cheese.
Unfortunate.
Right. But anyway, so immigration. So. I guess the first thing we should start with is the things that have been happening recently at the border. Oh, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Don't worry.
Okay.
Do you remember what time it was? All right, hold on. Ready? Cut.
Okay.
Start the time. Here, hold on. We have exactly 12 minutes left. So start the timer.
At 12?
Start the timer, and when it gets to 12 minutes, let me know.
Okay. Well, I'll just start it for 12, so.
Alright, you ready?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, resuming. So I guess the very first thing we should start by doing... That was terrible. I guess we should start at the border.
Okay.
So the things that have been happening recently at the border with... So I've been hearing a lot recently about, you know, like, people being detained and families being separated. Now, of course, you know, we're going to ignore the fact that Obama and Clinton did it constantly. And Bush, right? And
yeah.
You know, and it wasn't Carter also in on
something
that too?
like that.
I had seen that somewhere that Carter had also deported and detained, like, you know, a couple hundred
something like that. Yeah,
immigrants
Carter
during his
presidency. was I mean, the changes to immigration law started during LBJ's administration, if I remember right, because it was the early 60s.
Right. So
or it was either Kennedy or LBJ.
I was recently watching a video that showed, like, during the Clinton presidency, I shared it on my Facebook wall, I'm not sure if you saw it, but it literally was like, it was like a special forces, like, immigration operation, where they literally went in and seized, like, you know, over a dozen kids and snatched them.
I didn't see you post that, but I've seen that video before.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, like, if this kind of thing happened in today's political climate, could you even imagine what would happen? I mean, that'd be right. I mean, we just had the death of that dumb rapper, XXXTentacion, however you say it. Whatever.
Yeah.
And his memorial service turned into a riot.
Did it really?
It did afterwards.
I didn't see that.
And
That's crazy.
And they rioted through the streets afterwards. So it's like, if people are willing to freak out over that, I can't even imagine how
high... and his death wasn't even... It was monotonous. It was a robbery gone wrong, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Which, I mean, isn't that kind of the point of being rich, is that you don't have to rob people? He needed gangster
No,
credit.
I think he was being robbed.
Oh, he was the one being robbed.
Yeah, he was the one being robbed. No, so... But still, like, it's ridiculous that it turned into a riot afterwards. Like, What are they going to accomplish by a riot, which is literally the point of a riot, is to destroy public property to bring attention to a cause? What is the cause?
Right. We're gonna resurrect XXXTentacion. We're gonna bring him back.
Better find a Lazarus pit.
Oh man, Batman. But anyway, so here's my stance on this whole thing, right? And I mean, I wouldn't consider myself to be as hardline right as a lot of other people that I know when it comes to immigration. So I've seen the data, right? I've seen the data available on the economic impact of immigrants, and I'm not convinced entirely that they present a negative impact on the economy, right?
I would argue that the data in that supports that they present a positive impact.
Right. So I'm pretty on the fence about that one. I'm like, I've seen enough evidence to support the idea that I'm not, that the immigrants aren't going to destroy us economically, and so I'm not really worried about that. But then we start to discuss things like the issue of sovereignty and cultural affiliation. And I think my biggest issue with this entire thing so far, that nobody I've seen really has been discussing, because it's like, you hear the typical arguments. Oh, we don't want immigrants in the country because they'll destroy the country economically and take our jobs,
Yeah, that's
or, we don't want immigrants in the country because of crime or violence or anything like that. I hear all these arguments, but my main thing that I'm concerned with that I don't see addressed very often, that I actually saw, it was shared the other day on the Revolutionary Conservatives page on Facebook. It was basically saying, you have these people, all of whom come from countries with long histories of anti-liberty politics, where it's like, none of these places have ever created a functioning democracy that lasted, that wasn't riddled with corruption, that wasn't, poisoned with socialist experimentation / feudalistic military monarchy almost. And it's like, it would be nice to assume that the people coming over represent a change of heart politically, right? That they see the evils of fascism, that they see the evils of socialism, of these extremist ideologies, and that they embrace liberty, democracy, and republicanism, and that they then escape the United States and try to propagate political ideologies that will not lead to the system that they were trying to escape from.
Right.
But instead, we see these very same communities trying to propagate the exact ideologies that they're running from in the United States. And so, because you do not see a heavy presence, I mean, you'd think that with the heavy Catholic undertones of the Hispanic community that they would be very politically conservative and that they would be and that they would vote Republican. But unfortunately, I mean, if you're trying to come into a country, you're probably not going to align yourself with the party that's trying to stop you from coming into the country, which I understand. That's fine. But, they usually end up registering Democrat. They usually end up voting politically liberal. And they're not doing anyone any favors by trying to turn the United States back into what they were trying to run from in the first place. And so I have no issues economically with the way that illegal immigrants impact, the United States. I would like to see them, become legal citizens so that way that we can effectively use their tax dollars, because we are missing out on that money and they are taking advantage of services. But I mean, my biggest issue is really cultural. Liberty and democracy in the United States is dying as it is. The last thing I want is a large influx of voters who do not believe in liberty and democracy, who are only going to exacerbate the situation. So where do you come in on that?
So, I actually think I have a really good answer for this. You're right, typically when an immigrant comes to the country and they do become a legal citizen, they tend to vote Democrat. And the reason for that is the people who meet them out of the door once they become citizens are Democrats. The Democrats are the one with the ground game who goes around and they convert people to their cause, which is why we see the shifts in demographics that we do. Which is why it was, like, when Donald Trump won, it was such a radical shock. Is because, whoa, where did all these Republicans come from? Well, it's because most of those Republicans don't generally vote. The general voting population, the people who are politically motivated to go and make change in what they see as a vision for a better future, are Democrats.
I'll give you that.
So, when these people come in, I would say that most Hispanics fleeing Cuban, Mexican, Honduran, or whatever, the tyranny in Southern America, which is so rampant, either through direct dictatorships or through gang violence. These people are coming here. They are liberty-oriented until they meet someone who isn't. And that person is nice to them, that person becomes their friend, and that person brings them to their cause.
Well, that's the same thing that we see happen in South America all the time. That's the justification.
Exactly.
Vote for me, and I'll redistribute the land in your favor. Vote for me, and I'll take away private business with all of these, foreign companies that are actually investing in your economy, and I'll nationalize them and make them our country's factories. But then they all collapse in the end anyway.
This is a little different from that because it's more personal than politicians.
Right.
It's the people who work for the politicians.
Right.
It's the people, the grassroots members and activists who are going out and doing these things. But we have a great example of here in Nevada of how the dynamic has shifted away from that. You had organizations. I'm trying to remember what the name of the specific organization was, but up until about 2 or 3 years ago, that organization was the Latino political community.
Right.
Because there weren't, and it's a leftist organization. It's, my gosh, it's a popular news site and I can't for the life of me remember off the top of my head what it's called.
I will put it in post.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were saying.
And so when Latinos came to Nevada, and they wanted to get politically involved, that was the place that they went.
Right.
And when it went on Latino news television, the underline read the Latino political network or activist group. This has changed recently. I'm going to name drop here. The Libre Initiative has been working tirelessly to go and change the minds of these people. And so no longer is that other group, the Latino group, it's the left-leaning Latino organization. And the Libre Initiative is the right-leaning one.
Right.
And so we've seen
But do they have widespread support?
Oh yeah, across the whole nation. Everywhere where there's a large Latino community, there's a Libre Initiative chapter.
Oh, alright.
So in Florida and New York and in other places where there's large centralized Latino populations, the Libre Initiative is working on a community level.
What's the age demographics for this Libre Initiative?
It's a lot of the people that I see are pretty young, so high schoolers to young adults, early 30s is most of the people that I've seen. That may be different in other states, but in Nevada, that's what I've seen.
All right.
And there are outliers, of course. There are older adults who get involved, which is a good thing because those people are valuable resources with all of their experience.
My only real concerns then would be, first of all, I mean, it seems to me like Hispanic voters are going to go with whoever is nice to them first.
Well, wouldn't you?
No. And that
I would argue that most people in the world would do that.
And so
there's a very small population of people like you or me who are going to say,
I'm like, I don't care how you treat me, I care about how logically consistent your argument is.
Or how I feel about your policy positions.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who will vote along whoever's nicest to them, which is fair.
Right.
There's nothing inherently wrong with that.
No.
So,
I mean, yes, but I see why they do it. I understand. One major issue, though, that I have... so, the fact that you have to create a Libre Initiative, as opposed to just presenting them with a political ideology, like, one thing I've noticed, especially with the Hispanic communities, more so probably than any other immigrant community, is the tendency to vote along racial lines. Hispanics are really good at, going and starting a community and working out niches, and, it's admirable. They band together.
They're very family-oriented,
exactly.
And most of their race is their family.
Right, and so the issue that I have with that, though, is that it engages in the kind of identity politics that no conservative organization is ever really going to be able to provide. At least, that you have to have a specifically tailored... organization to attract a specific group of people. I mean, maybe I'm being biased, maybe I'm not looking at it from all sides of the picture. But what I know is that I feel like when you specifically cater a message to a specific group of people, it dilutes the entire idea that you are trying to present to begin with. It's like trying to make something more applicative. So it's like, as far as the identity politics are concerned, I do see conservative Hispanic voters.
Yeah, they exist.
But they
exist more now.
Exactly. But I see them
because of the Libre Initiative.
Exactly. But I see them voting for Hispanic conservatives.
Yeah.
To the point where if there is no Hispanic conservative available on the ballot, they just won't. Like, maybe if they're very ideologically strong, they'll just choose not to vote, but usually they'll totally just switch and vote for, because it's like, again, going back to you and I talking about the whole, vote for me and I'll redistribute the land in the way that it will make everybody happy and, nationalize these, companies and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. You and I both know, or at least I think so, there is nothing that somebody, at least for me, on the left could say that would make me vote for them. Because I know that they have other agendas. Even if they run on a platform that is let's say I disagree with them on 85% of stuff, but one of their campaign platforms is that they want to abolish the Federal Reserve because they feel like it oppresses people or something, right? Now inside my head I'm like, abolishing the Federal Reserve, I like that, that's a good idea. But then the rational part of my head kicks in and goes, no, first of all, what's the likelihood that they're going to be able to do that? Second of all, what am I trading in terms of my own political honor in exchange for that vote? Third, even if they are trying to ban the Federal Reserve, they're trying to create all of these other initiatives that I totally disagree with and that I find morally abhorrent, and so it's not a fair trade. Now, I'll say that, but not everybody is like that. Some people are totally single-issue voters and will totally flip on whatever their moral stance is in exchange for that single issue. And I think that's the biggest issue with things like the Libre Initiative. It's like you might be able to get people to, to be more conservative or be more center on some issues, but I feel like as long as the other side is willing to promise certain things in exchange for votes, I don't think those votes are locked down in the way that other voter blocks are.
So the thing about an organization like the Libre Initiative is it generally avoids some of those problems. Now we're looking at community organizing here. That's what it is. You're looking at things from an intellectual perspective, which is great, but the community organizing perspective gets you to understand how some people's emotions affect how they vote. Because you can't count on every person to be rational, and you can't count on rational people to be rational 100% of the time.
Agreed. I'm a romantic. I become emotional all the time about stupid bullcrap.
Exactly. So when you're like, I've been through some community organizing trainings with the sister organization of the Libre Initiative. That's how I know so much about them. I volunteer with them sometimes. The Libre Initiative is taking advantage of a sense of unease and providing a vision of a better future that is a vision that has not otherwise been presented to the Latino community.
Right.
The left is really good at this. They provide a vision and they provide, this is the path to get there, and people will buy into a hook, line, and sinker because of how their emotions are making them feel, the sense of unease. Well, the Libre Initiative turns it on its head and provides a different path to get to a different, better future, one that involves liberty, one that involves freedom, and one that provides economic prosperity for everyone.
Right.
So
I don't like that we have to sell people narratives in order to get them to change the way they behave.
How else would you do it?
Maybe I'm just being a total Vulcan. Maybe I'm being a Vulcan, and I'm just, do you know what ideal forms are?
Ideal forms, I'm not familiar with.
So Plato has this idea called ideal forms, where there is a perfect version of something somewhere. It doesn't exist in the physical world, but it does exist somewhere. and you striving for something, or this teacup, for instance. There is a perfect teacup somewhere, but this is not it. But it is striving to become the perfect teacup and doing the best that it can, even if it falls short of becoming the perfect teacup.
Right.
Right? And so, applying that to what we're talking about right now, I do believe that you can be right and still be wrong.
Right.
You know, you can, I think, you could say the statement, I think that Republicans are usually anti-immigration because they are racist. And that would be a true and false statement.
Yeah.
The first part, true. Conservatives typically tend to be anti-immigration. Because they're racist, not true. Not true. Like, that is not at all the reason. It has to do with much more nuanced and complicated issues regarding sovereignty and cultural identity.
Right.
But, and so there are half-truths. And getting back to the original discussion, if I'm going to, whether you have to sell people narratives or not, to me an idea is an idea, and it can be as good as it can be, and you should be able to be sold purely on that idea alone through its logical virtue. And there are tests and quality control initiatives inside of your brain that you can use to evaluate the validity of an argument or an idea. And it seems to me that, I can't talk to people about just, hey, the free market, here's why the free market is good, right? And here's all of these data statistics, right?
Yeah.
People don't work that way. I have to say, hey, do you want to be happy? Do you want to live in a world where everything is better for everyone? And then I have to go on this Care Bear frickin' spiel for like 10 minutes and then throw them the free market, and I have to it's almost like I'm a magician, I have to bait and switch them, Here's bullcrap fantasy wonderland, the bottle cap, right? And then here's frickin' the free market. Hey, you really like this fantasy? You really like this free market? And it's just like, I feel like it's disingenuous, and it relies on taking advantage of people's stupidity in order to further political agenda. And so it's like, I understand why we do it, but it doesn't mean that I like it.
I would disagree with your idea that it's a bait and switch. I think it's a lead-in. More than bait and switching, right? You're leading them along the path to the conclusion, which is what any good intellectual will do in a conversation.
Right. Except for Socrates. You're dumb, and let me explain to you why you're dumb.
Yeah, no. Except, or for Diogenes,
I'm looking for an honest man. You? No.
Yeah, so, no, I feel what we're trying to do with this is frame it. And an ideology does not inherently have a frame.
No, it doesn't.
No, so ideas
exist independently.
They exist independently of frames.
Which should be enough for you.
People don't, not even you. You won't accept an idea without it being framed according to how you would like to talk about things. And if you say otherwise than that, you're kidding yourself. So
I don't want to acknowledge that, but maybe.
Yeah,
but
so
maybe
you wouldn't even consider an idea unless it was framed according to a way that you think would allow it to be discussed and analyzed.
Right.
A lot of other people's framing don't work that way. They work in a different frame of mind, a different way of thinking.
Right.
And so organizations like the Libre Initiative provide a different frame.
Right.
And really what community organizing about and intellectual conversion is about finding the right way to frame a message. The right way to frame a message in order that people will accept it.
Right.
And so, like I said, it's not baiting and switching. It's leading them along so that they can find the conclusion themselves. You give them the bits, you give them the pieces by framing the idea with a message that is acceptable to them.
Right.
Because it appeals to their, especially for Latins, they very much value hard work and family structures, which are typically conservative values.
Right.
But when they get approached by a Democrat first, the Democrat will frame that on their message and say, do you think it's right that people who are hardworking are not being able to make a living wage? Do you think it's right that people who are hardworking can't afford health care?
Don't you think that the laborer should have control of the means of production?
And they might get there eventually, but that's not what they start with. They lead them along.
So slippery slope to communism, Kevin.
Conservatives and libertarians have to be careful about how we frame our messages in order that we're leading people, not just Latins, but everybody, along the path that we want them, so that we can convert them to the ideology. And that sounds a little like weird to say we're trying to convert you. That sounds aggressive and domineering, but it's the truth. And for all ideologies, is we want converts.
What about Ayn Rand though?
Ayn Rand wanted converts, that's for sure. I mean, she had the circle of Ayn Rand, which was very dogmatic and totally anti-her, but
so when I think of Ayn Rand, I think of that whole idea where it's like, you know, I am an individual. You, even for belonging to a group, you are a savage.
You know, and she has a lot of great ideas, but I think that one in specific, there's a difference between tribalism and belonging to a group. You can belong to a group without adopting savage traits.
So it depends on your level of zealotry.
It depends on your level of zealotry and your intellectual honesty.
Oh, okay. How transparent I'm being with other people.
Right.
Okay.
And how much you're willing to entertain. I mean, I don't think Ayn Rand would have been willing to entertain other ideas, which is why I don't follow, like, the Ayn Rand Institute. I follow the Atlas Society, because they're a little bit better about entertaining other people's ideas and trying to find rational ways to discuss them.
Being more open to discussion.
More open to discussion.
So here's my final... We'll have to wrap up the discussion, but here's my final thing that I wanted you to consider and then give me an answer for it. Do you know what percentage of the Hispanic community votes, or a rough approximation? How much of the Hispanic community ballpark do you think votes in the general election?
This is gonna be totally wrong, but I want to say 40.
40%?
So I would say
that's slightly better than the national average.
No, yeah, I would say Hispanics vote a little bit more than the national average.
Right.
Registered to vote Hispanics, of course.
Right.
There's a lot more than
what percentage
that,
of those registered Hispanic voters? No. So here's my real issue in the end. You have the Libre Society, or the Libre Initiative, which I think is great, right? If it sounded like I didn't think it was great, that's not true. I think it's great. Any group that tries to further liberty, democracy, republicanism standards of political discourse, I'm all for, right? But at the end of the day, what I'm thinking of is how much of the Hispanic community that votes is actually, you know, being targeted by those people and is successfully pulling them away. Because at this point, I still think it's fair to say at this point that at least nationally, on average, the Hispanic community is a locked-in Democratic voter bloc.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's... And whether you or I can sit here... Like, you know, we have Galahad. You know, I have lots of Hispanic friends. So some of which are very conservative, right? Which should make me reconsider my point on whether or not Hispanic people are, you know, like, willing to come over to the conservative side of things willingly. But then, I also have to think about it like this. I don't see the immigration issue going down. I see it getting more intense, more polarizing, more racialized, more radicalized, more extreme. And as that happens, as people shift towards ideological extremes, conservatives are only going to become less friendly towards immigrants, and liberals are only going to become more dependent on their vote. And as that happens, you know, you might chip away little bits, right, of logical, rational people. Because it's like, you know, I get it. Most people aren't even logical or rational to begin with, Hispanic, white, black, or otherwise. So no matter what group you're targeting, you're picking off little tiny bits, right? But it's like, you get a conservative Hispanic voter here, a conservative Hispanic voter here, who you were able to who you were able to convince on the basis of your logical, rational argument. But at least as things are right now, and they may change in the future. I'm not Nostradamus. But as I see things right now, the Hispanic voter bloc is overwhelmingly liberal, and as more of them pour into the country, I don't see it changing anytime soon. And while there are argumentative points to be made about the future of the Hispanic voting bloc in terms of its positive reception of liberty, democracy, and freedom, as things stand right now, I see it as a negative.
So, unfortunately, cultural change takes time. That's why it's important that organizations like the Libre Initiative have started and are working.
Right.
Hopefully there will be more.
And I will never impede them for doing so.
Right, that follow in their footsteps. But
Right.
I mean, the civil rights movement, which has one of the widest cultural impacts of any movement ever, didn't happen in a couple years. It took decades.
Right.
And it started way before Martin Luther King was a spokesman for it.
Right.
And so the seeds have to be planted first
Let's just
before
hope.
they can be reaped.
Let's just
and
right.
the Libre Initiative and other conservative organizations who are working on the community organizing side and framing messages so that people will be more likely to accept them
Mm-hmm.
are planting those seeds. So maybe it won't even happen in our lifetimes, but we're working we work as hard as we can to make the change that we want to see in the world.
Let's just hope that there's no LBJs, New Society, hiding out in that.
Yeah.
Because,
I agree that things will be more polarized over time as well, especially in the current political climate.
I just don't see it getting any. I mean, I'm not. I like Trump, although I criticize a lot of what he does because, like with any other candidate, I'm gonna pat him on the back when he does something I like, and I'm gonna shame him when he does something I don't like, because I'm not anyone's dogmatic follower. I'm not anyone's acolyte, right? So it's like. But at the same time, the one thing that I am willing to acknowledge, despite my usual fondness for Trump, one thing that I am willing to acknowledge is that he has only exacerbated the political extremism of the current climate.
And will continue to do so if he's reelected.
Exactly, which is only going to make things... Because it's like, I'm not entirely sure that humans are willing to voluntarily de-escalate political situations on their own.
No.
It seems like, at least from a historical standpoint, people are only willing to be destroyed or destroy themselves, which puts them back at the bottom of the political escalation chart, only for them to re-escalate that chart as time continues onward. And I'm just worried that the United States, obviously far into the future, we can discuss the idea of the Libre Initiative eventually creating conservative and center Hispanic voters that are willing to take all things into consideration. But I'm not entirely sure that the United States on its current course will last long enough for that long-term initiative to be viable. And maybe that's me being slightly nihilistic.
So, what you were saying about America not lasting very much longer at the current rate of cultural divisiveness, and so the cycle of democracy is only about 200 years. Can't quite remember what Enlightenment thinker it was who said that. It might have been Thomas Hobbes or John Locke. I'm not sure.
Ew, gross.
Thomas Hobbes, yeah, right. So maybe the United States falling apart might not necessarily be the worst thing in the world.
I mean,
if it breaks up into pieces, first of all, it'll be easier for those pieces to manage themselves.
Well, at least since the Republic is obviously dying, we'll get the Empire afterwards, right? We'll get the glorious... No, not Star Wars Empire. Bad. No Star Wars. No. Ugh. All right. Well, thank you so very much for joining us again today on New Realm. Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Arthur.
Thank you so very much for joining us. Join us again next time, ladies and gentlemen, where we'll be discussing a different topic, and we'll see you next week. Remember to spay and neuter your pets.